On my return from a business trip, I froze as my mother-in-law sold my $3 million condo to my brother-in-law for $300,000. I immediately reported it to the police and took it to court. My husband said one sentence that left everyone stunned. I stood frozen in front of the door to my own home. The lock had been changed. My brother-in-law, Kevin, opened the door with a smirk. "Mom sold this place to us. You should just leave." As he spoke, he casually tossed my suitcase into the cold hallway. The $3 million condo I had paid for in full before my marriage was now being sold off by my mother-in-law for the ridiculous price of $300,000. Worse, he showed me a handwritten piece of paper bearing my forged signature. My husband's entire family looked smug, expecting me to cry, break down, and surrender the home. But they were gravely mistaken. They had no idea that the quiet daughter-in-law they took for granted was a top graduate of NYU Law School. The real legal battle had just begun. The long flight from Chicago was delayed by bad weather. By the time the taxi dropped me off from JFK Airport at the lobby of my luxury Upper East Side building, it was well past 10 at night. New York was in the midst of a raw, damp spell. The sky was drizzling, and a biting wind cut through the air. I dragged my heavy suitcase. My body exhausted after 2 weeks of non-stop work with no days off. All I wanted was to soak in a warm bath and collapse into the plush bed in my own home. This home was an asset I bought with every penny I had saved over years of hard work, plus some help from my parents back home. The condo was spacious, with a high-end design, valued at exactly $3 million. The deed, in my name alone, was secured before I married Ben. My husband was a kind and devoted tech engineer. When we got married, to please my mother-in-law, I agreed to move into his large family's cramped house in Queens. This $3 million condo was left vacant. Occasionally, we would come to clean it, or I would stop by to rest when life at my in-laws became too overwhelming. Exiting the elevator on the 15th floor, I walked toward my familiar apartment at the end of the hall. But as I reached into my bag for the key, I stopped cold. My drowsiness vanished instantly. My eyes widened at the door before me. The sophisticated mechanical lock I had personally chosen was gone, replaced by an unfamiliar keypad lock. I blinked a few times, stepping back to check the unit number. It was clearly my apartment. The number was correct. The sunflower print doormat I ordered last season was still there. Why was the lock changed? My head started to spin with possibilities. A break-in, and the thief changed the lock. Or perhaps building management had an issue that required them to force the door. I knocked hard on the heavy metal door. The sound echoed in the silent hallway. No answer. I knocked again, more rapidly this time. Suddenly, the door swung open. The person standing inside was not a thief, nor was it building security. It was Kevin, my husband's younger brother. Kevin was married to Tiffany, the youngest sister and my mother-in-law's spoiled favorite. He wore shorts and a striped tank top. Chewing gum loudly with his open mouth, his face a mask of arrogance. The strong smell of alcohol on him made me frown and take a step back. "Clara, you're back from your trip." Kevin's tone was casual, as if nothing was wrong. "What are you doing in my home? Why is the lock changed?" I asked, my voice strained, trying to keep from shouting. "Your home? Not anymore. This is our house now, didn't you know? Mom sold this place to us. We just moved in 3 days ago." I felt like I'd been doused in ice water. My ears were ringing. Sold the house? My house, with the deed solely in my name? I had never signed any papers. How could it be sold to someone else? I pushed the door open forcefully and barged in, ignoring Kevin as he tried to block my way. The scene inside left me speechless. All my carefully arranged furniture and decor were in disarray. The sofa was covered in stains, and clutter was strewn everywhere. My clean, fragrant $3 million condo now looked like a war zone. "Get Tiffany in here, and get my mother-in-law. What is going on? Explain it to me," I yelled, my anger beginning to boil over. "Why are you shouting? Mom sold it to us legally. We have the papers. If you don't believe me, I'll get Mom to talk to you." Kevin gestured toward my master bedroom. The door opened, and out walked none other than Brenda, my mother-in-law. She was wearing a pair of shiny silk pajamas I had given her just last month. Her face was creased with annoyance at having her sleep disturbed. The most bitter confrontation of my life officially began at that moment. Brenda strolled into the living room and casually sat on the leather sofa I had bought with half a year's bonus. She looked at me with a cold stare, showing no sign of awkwardness or guilt for trespassing on someone else's property. "What's with all the noise, Clara? Waking people up in the middle of the night. You just got back from a long trip, and instead of greeting your mother, you start screaming. Mom, please explain what this is. Why did you just let yourself into my home, change the lock, and let Kevin and Tiffany move in? This is my personal property. I never agreed to lend or rent it to anyone. I tried to control my rage, articulating each word clearly. Brenda scoffed, reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and threw it onto the glass coffee table in front of me. Look at this. I didn't lend or rent it. I sold this condo to Tiffany and her husband. They're struggling financially, renting for years, moving from place to place. You and Ben live with me in a perfectly good house. This condo was just sitting empty, going to waste. I acted on your behalf to sell it to your sister-in-law so they could have a decent place to live. We're family, what's there to be so petty about? I was stunned. I walked over and picked up the paper from the table. Under the living room light, the sloppy handwriting was clear. The title read, in large letters, Bill of Sale. Below it was a paragraph stating that Brenda, as my representative, was selling the condo to Kevin and Tiffany. What made my blood boil to the point of tears was not just my mother-in-law's audacity, but the number written on that paper. $300,000. $300,000. You sold my $3 million condo for $300,000? I screamed, no longer able to control my voice. You know the real value of this place. Even if it were a bargain, it's still mine. Who gave you the right to sell it? Seeing my fierce reaction, Brenda slammed her hand on the table. Watch your mouth. You're the daughter-in-law. This home is yours, which means it belongs to Ben's family. Your husband is my son. He listens to me. Tiffany and her husband were in a tough spot. You, as their sister-in-law, wouldn't help. So I stepped in. That $300,000 is their life savings. Don't be so greedy. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I looked closer at the bottom of the paper. In the seller's section, next to Brenda's signature, was a crudely scrawled signature in my name, accompanied by a forged notary public stamp. Whose signature is this? I've been out of town for 2 weeks. When did I sign this? And this notary stamp? You forged my signature to blatantly steal my home, and you still have the nerve to act like you're in the right. Brenda looked startled for a moment. Her eyes darted away, but she quickly raised her head and retorted. I signed on your behalf. So what? It's here in black and white. The money's been received. I transferred $300,000 to your account this afternoon. Just take the money and go back to the house. This condo belongs to Kevin and Tiffany now. The outrageous entitlement of my mother-in-law made me realize she had been plotting to take my condo for a long time. While I was away, she used a spare key I had foolishly given her, let herself in, called a locksmith to change the lock, and moved her daughter and son-in-law in to occupy my home. It was a clumsy charade, a ridiculous piece of scrap paper. Yet they treated it like a sacred decree to seize the fruits of my labor. The tension in the living room was suffocating. I threw the worthless paper back on the table, staring daggers at Brenda and Kevin. You listen to me. This paper has zero value in the eyes of the law. The signature is a forgery, and so is the stamp. The deed to this condo is solely in my name. Without my authentic signature at a closing with a real estate attorney, no one has the right to sell or buy it. I'm giving you 30 minutes to pack your things and get out of my house. If you don't, I'm calling the police. My statement seemed to sting Kevin's pride. The unemployed young man who mooched off his wife and mother-in-law all year suddenly glared and shouted. Don't you get smart with me. Who are you trying to scare? What cop is going to get involved in a family matter? The money was paid, the house was handed over. You're living comfortably at your in-laws' place. Now you want to back out of the deal? This house is my hard-earned property. It has nothing to do with your family. You're a grown man, physically able, but you won't work. Instead, you conspire to steal from your own sister-in-law. Have you no shame? Now pack your things. I pointed directly at the front door. You bitch, how dare you talk to me like that? Kevin cursed and lunged at me. He shoved my shoulder so hard that I stumbled back, nearly falling, my head narrowly missing the corner of the glass table. He didn't stop there. He stormed to the door, lifted my 50-pound suitcase, and hurled it into the hallway. The sound of the suitcase crashing against the tiled floor was deafening. The latches burst open, and my clothes and documents scattered across the floor. Get out of my house. This is my house now. If you dare set foot in here again, I'll break your legs. Kevin jabbed a finger in my face, his own face flushed with alcohol and rage. Instead of restraining her son-in-law, Brenda stood with her arms crossed, watching me with a look of triumph and satisfaction. She said haughtily, "See, you wouldn't listen to reason. You had to have it the hard way. I suggest you take that 300,000 and live your life. A married woman should obey her husband's family. If you cause any more trouble, Ben will divorce you too. You better wise up, collect your things, and get out of my sight." I stood frozen in the living room, staring at the brutish man and his cruel mother-in-law. My heart was as cold as ice, not a single tear fell. My anger had surpassed grief, transforming into a chilling calm. I realized that arguing with uneducated people who disregard the law was a mistake. Kevin was drunk. He was ready to use violence to protect his ill-gotten gains. If I continued to resist, I would be the one to get physically hurt. They thought they could subdue me with violence and tyranny. They thought I was a weak woman, easily bullied. They were dead wrong. I slowly straightened my clothes, looking directly into Brenda's eyes. My voice was low, but firm. "Fine. If that's what you've decided, I have nothing more to say. But remember this, you won't be able to swallow this house so easily." With that, I turned and walked out the door. I heard the door slam shut behind me, followed by a stream of curses from inside. I bent down and silently gathered every piece of clothing, every scattered document from the cold hallway, stuffing them back into my dented suitcase. Tonight I had lost my home, but this war was just beginning. I dragged the suitcase with its broken wheel down the apartment hallway, my shadow stretching long under the dim yellow lights. I didn't call my husband to complain, nor did I cry to my parents. I told myself to stay calm. Ben, my husband, was still on an overseas assignment and wouldn't be back for 2 more days. Calling him now would only worry him and disrupt his work, and he couldn't resolve anything immediately. His gentle, compliant nature always made him yield to his mother. I needed hard evidence so that even he couldn't defend his family. Reaching the first-floor lobby, I went straight to the building's security office. The guard, a man named Mike who often greeted me, was shocked to see my disheveled appearance. "Mrs. Miller, you're just back from your trip. What happened to your suitcase? Where are you going at this hour?" I managed a faint smile, making up an excuse about an urgent matter. I explained to Mike that I needed to see the CCTV footage from the 15th floor hallway for the 2 weeks I was gone. As the legal owner of the unit with all the supporting documents, and citing my suspicion of a trespasser, the building management agreed to help. Sitting in front of the security office monitor, I carefully watched the fast-forwarded recordings. And there it was. On the 3rd day after I left, the camera captured Brenda bringing a locksmith to force open my door. An hour later, Kevin and Tiffany were seen struggling to move in boxes and furniture. The sharp, clear images showed every face. This would be irrefutable proof of their trespassing and property seizure. I asked Mike to copy the entire video file onto a USB drive and email a backup to my personal account. With the USB drive in hand, I thanked the guard and called a cab. My destination was not my in-laws' house in Queens, but a small studio in a quiet part of the East Village. It was a place I had rented when I first graduated and started working. I called the owner, whom I knew well. Luckily, there was a vacant room I could move into immediately. The room was barely 300 square feet, cramped and old. It was a world away from my glamorous, high-end condo. I lay down on the hard, single bed. My whole body ached, but my mind was crystal clear. I closed my eyes, replaying the recent events. My mother-in-law's cruelty, my brother-in-law's thuggishness, and my sister-in-law's connivance. They coveted my property out of boundless greed, believing their fake document could fool the law. But they didn't know a secret I had never revealed since my marriage. I wasn't just an ordinary office worker. I graduated summa cum laude from NYU School of Law. 4 years of wrestling with statutes, case studies, and real-world legal battles had trained me to think logically and stay composed in the face of conflict. I didn't become a practicing attorney because I wanted a stable, less confrontational job, but that knowledge was ingrained in me. I didn't sleep that night. I opened my laptop and meticulously planned my next steps. They liked using a forged document to steal a house. I would show them the price of greed and legal ignorance. The next morning, New York was bright, though the sky was still a hazy gray. I took a personal day off from work. The first thing I did was change into a smart outfit and apply light makeup to hide my exhaustion. A wise woman never lets her enemy see her weakness. I went straight to the bank branch where I had rented a safe deposit box for years. Since moving in with my in-laws, I had sensed the complexities of the relationship and the prying nature of other family members. Therefore, I never kept any important documents at their house or in my condo. Everything was carefully sealed inside this bank vault. A bank officer escorted me to the secure room. I entered my PIN, turned the key, and with a satisfying click, the heavy vault door opened. Inside was a thick stack of files, neatly wrapped in a waterproof Ziploc bag. I took out the files, laid them on the table, and began to review my trump cards. My first trump card was the original deed to the property. A thick document with official seals, it clearly stated my name as the sole owner, with a note that the asset was acquired before the marriage. This was the ultimate legal proof affirming my absolute right to the property. No one, not even my husband, had the right to interfere in its sale or transfer without my signed consent. My second trump card was the original purchase agreement from the developer and the proof of payment. These documents verified the legitimate origin of the asset and its true value of $3 million. This would demolish any argument that the condo was of low value or that my husband's family had contributed to it. My third trump card was my bank statements and wire transfer records. I had the bank print out all the transactions related to the purchase, clearly showing the funds I transferred to the developer, including a $1 million wire from my parents to help me. The transparent flow of funds proved that not a single penny from my husband's family was involved. My fourth trump card. A photo of the fake bill of sale. The night before, when Brenda threw the paper on the table, I had quickly snapped a high-resolution photo of it with my phone, focusing on the forged signature and fake stamp. It was clear enough for an expert to identify it as a forgery. My fifth trump card. The USB drive with the building's CCTV footage. The video clearly showed the scene of my husband's family illegally breaking the lock and moving in. I organized my 5 trump cards, my mind remarkably calm. With this rock-solid evidence, I could go straight to the police. However, if I did that, the case would likely proceed through standard administrative channels. They would be summoned, warned, at most fined, and forced to vacate. But that was too lenient for the hurt and humiliation they had inflicted on me. Brenda's greed and the audacity of Kevin and Tiffany had to be punished with a more severe sentence, one that would ensure they never dared to steal from anyone again. I wanted them to walk right into the trap they had built with their own greed, a perfect legal snare that would catch them on the most serious criminal charges, fraud and grand larceny. I took out my phone and found a familiar name in my contacts. Maya, my best friend from college. Unlike me, who chose a corporate job, Maya was now a top real estate agent in New York, specializing in luxury properties. Maya was smart, sharp, and an expert at reading clients. "Hey, Clara, back in town? Did you bring me anything?" Maya's cheerful voice came through the phone. "I have something for you. But first, you need to help me with a little performance. A performance that requires your real estate marketing genius." I smiled, a determined glint in my eye. "What kind of performance? This sounds serious." I arranged to meet Maya at a quiet cafe. Over the next 2 hours, I recounted the entire ordeal and detailed my counterattack plan. After listening, Maya slammed the table, furious, cursing my husband's family. "They're straight-up thieves. You're too nice, Clara. If it were me, I would have scratched that Kevin's face off. Don't worry, leave it to me. I'll teach these greedy, ignorant people a lesson they'll never forget." Maya patted her chest, full of assurance. The plan to bait the crocodile was officially in motion. I would use the fake bill of sale they created to trap them, turning them from mere trespassers into perpetrators of a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The maximum penalty awaited them. Breathing a sigh of relief, I sipped my black coffee. I was confident I would win this legal battle. "It's just getting started, Brenda. You're going to pay for that $300,000 piece of paper with the rest of your life." After our meeting, Maya acted immediately. My friend, a seasoned real estate agent, possessed incredible communication skills and a deep understanding of client psychology. We agreed not to use Maya's personal phone number, instead buying a new SIM card to avoid any risk of her identity being exposed. Sitting in Maya's office, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, placing it next to the phone Maya would use. Maya cleared her throat, adjusted her voice to sound professional, and dialed Kevin's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. The sound of loud music and clinking glasses came from the other end. It seemed Kevin was at a bar, celebrating his successful seizure of the condo. "Hello, who's this?" Kevin's voice was slurred. Maya spoke in a sweet, clear tone. "Good afternoon, Mr. Evans. My name is Maya, a marketing manager from Apex Realty. I apologize for bothering you. I received information about a condo on the 15th floor of a luxury high-rise on the Upper East Side that you're currently managing. I happen to have a high-profile client who is extremely interested in purchasing that exact unit." Kevin immediately cut her off arrogantly. "A realtor? I just bought this place to live in. Not for sale. How'd you get my number? Just hang up. Maya didn't flinch. She escalated the conversation with the most enticing bait. Mr. Evans, please. Just hear me out. My client is an expatriate businessman. He is a firm believer in feng shui. He has surveyed the entire building and determined that only your unit has the right aura to bring fortune to his new business venture. He is willing to pay $4 million, cash, with the full payment made at the closing. If you agree to sell. The phone line went silent. The music was still audible, but I could clearly hear Kevin swallow. The silence lasted about 10 seconds. 10 seconds in which greed waged a fierce battle in his mind. I knew the current market value for that condo was around $3 million. The $4 million offer from Maya was a massive windfall. Having bought it from Brenda for a mere $300,000 and now being able to flip it for $4 million created a profit margin too vast for an unemployed man like Kevin to ignore. $4 million? You serious? Your client will pay cash? Kevin's voice had completely changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by suspicion and desire. Maya winked at me, a triumphant smile on her face. Absolutely, sir. Money is no object for my client. If you agree, we can meet at a real estate attorney's office in Midtown the day after tomorrow. You bring the property documents. We'll provide a $1 million deposit in escrow. Once the title transfer is complete, the remaining $3 million will be wired directly to your account. Please, take your time to consider. No need to think about it. The day after tomorrow. Just have your client bring the money. I'll bring the papers to get it done. Kevin answered in a flash, afraid Maya would change her mind. The call ended. Maya hung up, turned to me, and gave me a high five, laughing. Human greed really has no limits. I bet you your entire husband's family won't be able to sleep tonight. They're probably dreaming of that $4 million pile of cash. I looked out the window, feeling no joy in my heart. The deceit and greed of my husband's family disgusted me. My mother-in-law sold her daughter-in-law's asset for a pittance to give $300,000 to her other son-in-law. That son-in-law was ecstatic, thinking he'd scored a $3 million home for $300,000, and was now on the verge of another massive profit. They were so blinded by money they didn't even stop to think how a simple handwritten bill of sale, without any legal notarization, could possibly be used for a title transfer at a legitimate attorney's office. But that was exactly what I needed. I needed them to bring that forged document before legal witnesses to perfect their criminal act. Wednesday morning, the New York sky was clear after days of gloom. I wore a crisp white blouse, a black pencil skirt, and my hair in a neat bun. I chose my most professional attire because today was not for fighting, but for upholding the law. Accompanying me was Mr. Harrison, a senior attorney I greatly respected. Mr. Harrison was in his late 40s, well-built, with a stern, square face and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. When I showed him all my files and explained the situation, Mr. Harrison said only one thing. Never let crime go unpunished, even if it's within your own family. You must see this through to the end. The attorney's office was located on a busy street in Midtown. As planned, Maya had scheduled the meeting with Kevin's family for 9 in the morning. Maya had even hired an extra to pose as the expatriate's assistant, carrying a convincing black briefcase to enhance their confidence. Mr. Harrison and I sat in a cafe across the street, observing from behind the glass. At precisely 8:45, a taxi pulled up. Brenda got out first. Today, she wore a gaudy maroon dress, a large gold chain around her neck. Her face was caked with thick powder and bright red lipstick. Behind her were Kevin and Tiffany. Kevin had on a poorly tucked-in shirt, his hair slick with gel. Tiffany, despite her visible pregnancy, was teetering on high heels, a constant smile on her face as she chattered away. The three of them swaggered in, ordering the staff to hold the door open, with the arrogance of people about to receive $4 million. Maya greeted them warmly in the lobby and escorted them to a VIP conference room on the second floor. Through text messages, Maya kept me updated. I knew she was asking them to present the proof of ownership to prepare the deposit agreement. Brenda, without hesitation, produced the handwritten bill of sale, proudly patting her chest and declaring, "This is the legal bill of sale between me and my daughter-in-law. I have the right to decide everything." Maya pretended to examine the document, nodding and praising Brenda's diligence, then signaled for her assistant to open the black briefcase to show a certified cashier's check for $1 million. As the eyes of Brenda, Kevin, and Tiffany were glued to the check, Maya secretly sent me a single text message. "Go." I took a deep breath and nodded to Mr. Harrison. We crossed the street and pushed open the door to the law office. The sound of my heels echoed on the wooden staircase. Each step was firm and resolute. As I pushed open the door to the VIP room and walked in, the smile on Brenda's face froze. Kevin, who was holding a pen to sign the receipt for the deposit, stopped mid-motion. The pen dropped from his hand and rolled across the table. Tiffany's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with shock, as if she were seeing a ghost. The atmosphere in the room instantly turned to ice. "What are you doing here? Who let you follow us?" Brenda was the first to recover. She slammed the table, stood up, and shouted to assert her authority. I pulled out an empty chair and slowly sat down across from them. I glanced at the forged document lying on the table, then looked up, meeting my mother-in-law's eyes with a gaze as cold as steel. "I came to see how long you and Kevin's family plan to continue this fraudulent charade. Selling someone else's property, yet you walk around so casually as if nothing is wrong." Maya quickly gathered the draft agreement and the briefcase, retreating to the side of the room. Her part was done. Now it was my turn to play my hand. My sudden appearance with a serious man in a black suit made Kevin uneasy. He leaned forward, pointing a finger at me. "Watch your mouth. We're selling our own house. What business is it of yours to make wild accusations? You sold it to Mom. Mom sold it to us. It's in black and white right here. Get out now, before I call security to throw you out." I gave a cynical smile, ignoring the shallow man. "Mr. Harrison stepped forward calmly. He took his attorney's card from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. His voice was deep and authoritative. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller. Good morning, Mr. Evans, Mrs. Evans. I am David Harrison, legal counsel for Mrs. Clara Miller. I ask that all parties remain calm and listen as I explain the legal consequences of your current actions." Upon seeing the attorney's card, Brenda's face began to pale. Tiffany shrank back behind her husband. Her hands clutching her pregnant belly, her eyes filled with fear. Kevin tried to cling to what little pride he had left, raising his voice. "A lawyer, so what? Even lawyers have to use common sense. I paid for this house. This paper has Clara's signature. Who dares say this is fraud?" Mr. Harrison took a copy of the condo's deed and the proof of asset origin from his briefcase, placing them neatly beside Brenda's fake document. He pointed to the flimsy paper, his voice as sharp as a knife. "First, the deed to this condo is solely in Mrs. Clara Miller's name. It was acquired before her marriage. The entire flow of funds for the purchase has been verified as Mrs. Miller's personal assets and a gift from her family. Mrs. Miller's husband, in other words, your son, Brenda, has no legal claim to this property." Mr. Harrison paused to let the information sink in, then continued with emphasis. "Second, you, Brenda, do not possess a valid power of attorney from Mrs. Miller to conduct this sale. Your actions of creating a handwritten document, arbitrarily setting the price from $3 million to $300,000, are entirely invalid. Most importantly, the signature and notary stamp on this document have undergone a preliminary forensic analysis. I can state with certainty that they are forgeries. Forging someone's signature to seize their assets is a serious felony." Brenda trembled, her mouth stammering. "I am her mother-in-law. I have the right to decide. I didn't forge it. She signed it herself. Don't you dare slander me." Mr. Harrison gave a slight smile. "Brenda, I should remind you that this office has a comprehensive CCTV system with clear audio and video recording. Your statement just now has been recorded as evidence. Under state law, the act of using deceit and a forged document to obtain control of another's assets valued over a certain threshold constitutes felony fraud. With the property valued at $3 million, you are facing a significant prison sentence. You attempted to steal a $3 million condo. You will undoubtedly receive a punishment that fits the crime." The word prison echoed in the silent room, causing Brenda to collapse weakly into her chair. Kevin stared blankly, sweat beading on his forehead. This family, so used to bullying their daughter-in-law at home, had never imagined that one act of greed could land them behind bars. They were psychologically shattered. People with little understanding of the law always assume that jungle justice and feudal family traditions can cover up any crime. Now, faced with the unyielding articles of the law, they were nothing but pathetic cowards. The atmosphere became suffocating. Tiffany started to sob, shaking Kevin's arm. "Kevin, what do we do? I'm pregnant. I don't want to go to jail. Mom, what have you gotten us into?" Hearing her daughter cry, Brenda, feeling a pang of pity and seeing herself on the brink of prison, decided to play her trump card. Drama. She slumped dramatically over the conference table, burying her face in her arms and beginning to wail. "Oh, dear God. My daughter-in-law is conspiring with an outsider to send her own mother-in-law to prison. I sold the house to your sister-in-law so she'd have a place to live, but you have the heart to sue your own mother. What kind of daughter-in-law are you? So cruel. Everyone, look. This is the daughter-in-law who bites the hand that feeds her. She cried hysterically, deliberately causing a scene to attract the attention of the staff outside. Seeing his mother-in-law's act, Kevin followed suit. He leaned across the table, trying to snatch the files and the fake document to destroy the evidence. Give me those. Without these papers, what are you going to sue with? Don't push it. I had anticipated this desperate reaction. I took a step back, letting Mr. Harrison shield the documents with his body. Kevin's hand grasped at empty air, and he quickly retracted it when he met the lawyer's sharp gaze. Violence will not solve this, Mr. Evans. These are just copies. The originals are stored safely in a bank vault, along with the CCTV footage of you and Brenda breaking the lock on Mrs. Miller's home. Tearing up these papers will do you no good. Mr. Harrison calmly placed the documents back in his briefcase. I stepped forward, looking down at my mother-in-law. My voice was firm, without a hint of pity. Mom, stop this cheap drama. This is a legal office, not a marketplace where you can do as you please. I'm giving your family one final ultimatum. If you and Kevin's family don't want to rot in prison, you will meet my 3 conditions. Brenda stopped crying, lifting her makeup-streaked face to look at me. Kevin and Tiffany also held their breath, listening. First, within 3 days, Kevin's family must clear all their personal belongings from my condo and restore it to its original condition. Second, you will pay $150,000 in damages. This covers emotional distress, the cost of repairs and a complete security system replacement, my temporary housing expenses, and the cost of disposing of all the furniture you have soiled. Third, the 3 of you must provide a formal, written apology to me, which will be sent to Ben and the entire extended family. $150,000? Are you trying to rob us? The $300,000 I transferred for the house, I want it back now. Where am I supposed to get $150,000 for your damages? Brenda shrieked like a stepped-on snake. Kevin was just as indignant. Clara, don't be unreasonable. At most, we'll give back the condo. You give us our $300,000 back. End of story. There's no way we're paying that much in damages. I shook my head coldly. I haven't touched a single cent of that $300,000. I will return it directly to you. But the $150,000 in damages is non-negotiable. The crimes of property damage and fraud cannot be settled with a simple apology. You have no right to bargain. Brenda suddenly leaped up, pointing at me aggressively. I'm not paying any damages. If you have the guts, call the police. I'd rather die than give you a single penny. You disrespectful daughter-in-law. At this point, I knew that mercy was wasted on these stubborn people. They still thought I was bluffing. They believed the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship would bind me, preventing me from taking final action. They were wrong. I calmly took my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and dialed 3 numbers. 911. I put it on speaker. The sound of the dialing tone echoed coldly in the room. They wanted to test my ruthlessness. I would grant their wish. Before the 3rd ring, the call was answered. 911. What's your emergency? A male officer's clear voice came through. The sound from the speaker was so sharp it made Tiffany jump and retreat to a corner. I took a deep breath and, in a clear and steady voice, explained the situation. Good afternoon, officer. My name is Clara Miller. I am currently in a VIP conference room on the 2nd floor of a law office on Madison Avenue. I wish to report an organized criminal act of document forgery and fraud. The group of 3 perpetrators is currently being detained at the scene, along with all evidence, including forged documents intended to extort and seize my $3 million condominium. The perpetrators are showing signs of aggression and threatening violence. I request that authorities be dispatched immediately to handle the situation. The officer on the other end confirmed the information, took down the address, and informed me that a unit from the nearest precinct would arrive in 15 minutes. I ended the call, put the phone back in my bag, then stood with my arms crossed, watching the 3 members of my husband's family. Brenda's face was ashen, her legs trembling so much she couldn't stand straight. She had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. Kevin's face was pale, his eyes darting around for an escape route, but the door was now blocked by Maya. Their earlier arrogance, thuggish behavior, and foul language had completely vanished. All that remained was the profound fear of people who knew they had fallen into a legal pit they couldn't climb out of. Exactly 15 minutes later, the wail of a police siren grew closer, then stopped right in front of the building. 3 uniformed officers came upstairs. The lead officer, a sergeant, glanced around the room, assessed the situation, and asked, "Who called 911? I calmly stepped forward. "I made the call, officer." I handed over my ID and motioned for Mr. Harrison to explain the details. Mr. Harrison professionally opened his briefcase, presenting the original deed, the photo of the forged document, and turned on a tablet that played the CCTV footage of Brenda's family breaking the lock and occupying the condo. Each piece of evidence was presented clearly, logically, and flawlessly. The officer carefully examined the documents, his brow furrowed. He turned to Brenda and Kevin, his voice firm. "Ma'am, sir, do you admit that you created the signature on this document without Mrs. Miller's consent? Did you intentionally hire a locksmith to break into the Upper East Side condo to live there?" Brenda stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "Officer, I'm her mother-in-law. I saw the place was empty, so I acted on her behalf to sell it to her sister-in-law at a lower price. This is a family matter, officer. We can handle it as a family. I didn't know the law was this complicated. Please forgive me, officer." Kevin quickly chimed in. "That's right, officer. We're family. I already gave the $300,000 to my mother-in-law, and she transferred it to my sister-in-law. This is just a simple civil dispute, officer." The police officer shook his head firmly. "A family matter does not give you license to break the law. There is no rule that allows a mother-in-law to forge her daughter-in-law's signature to sell her personal assets. You valued a $3 million condo at $300,000 and used a fake document to conduct a transaction. This is no longer a simple civil dispute. This action clearly has criminal elements of asset seizure. The value is substantial. All of you will come with us to the precinct for further questioning." The command was spoken with authority. Tiffany cried hysterically, clinging to Kevin, but was separated by a female officer. Brenda and Kevin were told to walk ahead under the watchful eyes of 2 officers. As she passed me at the door, Brenda paused. She lifted her head, her eyes filled with hatred, glaring at me as if she wanted to swallow me whole. Her teeth ground together as she hissed with venom. "You are a cruel woman, Clara. You destroyed your husband's family. You'll get what's coming to you." I did not flinch from her gaze. I offered a faint smile, the sharpest and calmest smile I had ever given. "Karma is in God's hands, Brenda. But prison is a choice you made with your own greed. Please, go ahead. You have a long time to think about it in there." Brenda trembled, turned, and stumbled down the stairs with her cowardly son-in-law. I stood on the second floor, watching them being led into the patrol car. The car door slammed shut, sealing away all their malicious intentions. The battle was half won. But I knew the real storm, from the self-righteous relatives, was about to begin. The next morning, the sun rose late. Weak rays of light tried to pierce through the thick, humid haze of a New York morning. I hadn't slept well. The image of my mother-in-law and brother-in-law getting into the police car kept replaying in my mind. The investigators had held them for preliminary questioning and evidence gathering. I knew, given the seriousness of the case, that the holding cell was just the beginning of a long legal ordeal. I made a cup of warm water with honey and sat curled up on a small wooden chair in my cramped East Village studio. The room was so quiet I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. At precisely 9 in the morning, a series of sharp knocks shattered the silence. I got up and cautiously peeked through the peephole. It wasn't the landlord or a delivery person, but Aunt Carol and Uncle Rick. Aunt Carol was my mother-in-law's sister, and Uncle Rick was my husband's youngest uncle. This was the squadron of relatives I had been expecting. The ones who always called themselves elders, always waving the banner of family morality to pressure the younger generation, especially the daughter-in-law, who was seen as an outsider. I slowly opened the door, keeping my distance. "Good morning, Aunt, Uncle. What brings you here so early?" Aunt Carol was holding a box of pastries from a local bakery. She forced a friendly smile, but her eyes were sharp and probing. She pushed the door open slightly and stepped inside, her eyes scanning the tiny room with an exaggerated expression of pity. "Oh, you poor thing, dear. Having a beautiful home but living in a cramped place like this. I heard there was a big problem in the family, that it even went to the police station. I was so worried. Your uncle and I came straight here this morning to see how you were doing." Uncle Rick cleared his throat, pulled over a plastic chair, and sat with his legs crossed, adopting the posture of an elder who had come to mediate. "Sit down, dear. Your aunt and I need to talk about something important. Our family was doing just fine. Why did you have to stir up trouble and get your mother-in-law and brother-in-law thrown in jail?" I didn't accept the pastry box, nor did I offer them anything to drink. I just pulled a wooden chair and sat opposite them. Uncle Rick's words made their purpose clear. They weren't here to check on me or protect me. They were here to pressure me into backing down. I'm sorry, Uncle. It wasn't me who stirred up trouble. It's my mother-in-law and Kevin who have to face the consequences of their actions. They forged documents and tried to steal my personal asset worth $3 million. The law is clear on that. I was just reporting a crime to protect what I worked for. Aunt Carol immediately slapped her thigh, launching into her cliché lecture on morality. When a woman gets married, her property becomes her husband's family's property. Your mother-in-law is old, she probably just made a mistake. Selling the house cheap to Tiffany was out of pity for her sister, who was struggling. You, as the sister-in-law, instead of helping, you throw your own mother-in-law in jail. You've gone too far. Where are you going to show your face? Let me tell you. Just drop the charges. I'll vouch for your mother. The $300,000 for the sale was already transferred to you. Now, your aunt and the other relatives will pool some money. We'll give you another $300,000, for a total of $600,000. You take the money, we forget this ever happened. Protect the family name, protect the honor of your husband, Ben. Aunt Carol spoke at length, as if she had rehearsed her speech. In their eyes, $3 million and my dignity could be easily exchanged for $600,000 and the empty words of family. They used the guise of family to legitimize theft, using the pressure of seniority to force me to swallow my grief. The room fell silent. I crossed my arms. My eyes swept over Uncle Rick's smug face and Aunt Carol's arrogant smile. They were sure that a young woman like me, living far from her own family, would be swayed by threats coated with a little money. They thought I would be afraid of gossip, of a broken family, of divorce, and would just give in. I took a long breath and straightened my back. When I spoke, my voice was as cold and sharp as broken glass. Thank you, Aunt Carol and Uncle Rick, for going to the trouble of thinking about my family, but it seems there's a huge misunderstanding. A sense of family isn't built on fraud and theft. If my mother-in-law truly considered me her daughter, she wouldn't have forged my signature, broken into my home, and thrown me out in the middle of the night. If Kevin and Tiffany had any decency, they wouldn't have taken what wasn't theirs. Aunt Carol tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand firmly and continued, my voice louder, emphasizing every word. Aunt Carol, as I recall, you own a commercial building on a main street in Westchester. It's a prime location. The market value is no less than $10 million. Right now, my husband and I are also struggling. I want to open a law office, but don't have a space. Since you feel so sorry for your niece, how about you sell me that building for $1 million? I'll pay cash today. You can transfer the deed to my name right away, for the sake of our family ties. How about it, Auntie? Aunt Carol was aghast. Her face turned beet red with anger. Her eyes bulged, and her voice became shrill. Are you crazy? My $10 million building? You're offering $1 million? You've lost your mind. Are you trying to rob me in broad daylight? That's my and your uncle's life's work. There's no way I'm selling it for that cheap. I laughed. A cynical, bitter laugh for the hypocrites in front of me. Aunt Carol's own words were the very trap that ensnared the ridiculous argument she had just used to pressure me. Then why are you forcing me to sell my hard-earned property for cheap? I stood up and slammed my hand on the table, startling both of them. That $3 million condo is the result of my hard work and the sweat of my parents, who saved every penny for me. Why is it that when my mother-in-law sells it for $300,000, a tenth of its value, you call it pity? But when I offer a tenth of the price for your asset, you call me a robber? What kind of morality has such double standards, Auntie? Uncle Rick was speechless. His face was pale, and he couldn't utter a word. He scratched his head, trying to find another excuse. But if you report them to the police, when Ben comes home, he could divorce you. Dear, no matter how successful a woman is, if she loses her husband, she's worthless. Let me be clear, Uncle. If Ben is a man who can distinguish right from wrong, he will support me in using the law to protect my assets and punish crime. But if he blindly defends his family's greed and asks for a divorce, I have no need for a husband like that. I live under the protection of the law. I don't need pity or love from anyone. Your money, Aunt and Uncle, take it home for your own children. I will only accept the $150,000 in damages and demand they vacate my property. If not, the criminal charges will proceed as scheduled. Please, Aunt and Uncle, you can leave now. I have work to do. I walked over and opened the door wide, inviting them to leave. Aunt Carol and Uncle Rick stood up, fuming. Aunt Carol grabbed her bakery box and walked out, muttering under her breath that I was cold-blooded and had no manners. They walked dejectedly down the hallway, carrying the shame of people who tried to lecture with false morality, only to have their own hypocrisy exposed. Night fell, and the New York air felt colder than usual. A light rain began to fall, tapping against the window of my studio. I sat in front of my laptop, reviewing all the legal files and relevant statutes to prepare for my next meeting with the investigator. My phone buzzed. A message from Mike, the security guard, informed me that my husband's family had shown no signs of packing. The 3-day deadline I had given them was about to expire. It seemed they still wanted to be stubborn. At exactly 11 at night, my door was knocked on again. This time, the knocks were softer, hesitant. I frowned and peeked through the peephole. The hallway light illuminated 2 pale, tired faces. Kevin and Tiffany. It seemed Kevin had been released after being held for questioning. Since he wasn't the primary perpetrator who signed the fake document, and Tiffany was pregnant, he likely got a conditional release. But his status was surely under watch. Their coming here in the middle of the night was definitely not to check on me. I opened the door. A far cry from his thuggish demeanor when he threw my suitcase, Kevin now looked haggard. His beard was unkempt, his eyes filled with panic. He stood to the side, pushing Tiffany forward. Tiffany was wearing a loose maternity dress, her hair a mess. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears, grabbing my arm pleadingly and sobbing. "Clara, I'm begging you. Please. Save our family. Forgive my mom and my husband." I took a step back, breaking her grasp. I didn't like people grabbing me, especially not with these calculated tears. "Get up. What is it? Come in and talk properly. Don't cause a scene in the middle of the night and disturb the neighbors." Tiffany stumbled inside, holding onto Kevin's arm. She sat on the edge of the bed and continued her weeping. "The police said my mom's and my husband's case is serious. If it goes to court, they could be in prison for years. I'm 6 months pregnant. If Kevin goes to jail, my baby will be born without a father. What will happen to me? Mom is old, she can't handle prison. I know we were wrong. We'll return the condo tomorrow. Please, just drop the charges." I poured 2 glasses of water, placed them on the table, and calmly looked at my sister-in-law's performance. Tiffany's tears flowed freely, but I didn't sense any genuine remorse. They were crying out of fear of the law, fear of prison, not because they regretted the pain and humiliation they had caused. "Tiffany, you're about to be a mother. You should know that parents need to be role models for their children. Kevin wasn't arrested for no reason. Stealing my home was a deliberate, planned act. When you took that fake document to the attorney's office to get $4 million, did you think about the law? When Kevin cursed at me and threw my belongings onto the street, did you think that I was also a human being who needed a place to live?" Kevin looked down, answering softly. "Clara, I know I was wrong. I was stupid for listening to Mom. And now look where it got me. Please forgive me. Give me another chance." Kevin's attempt to shift blame only disgusted me further. A man who would throw his own mother and mother-in-law under the bus to save himself deserved no pity. I shook my head firmly. My voice sharp, leaving no room for negotiation. "I already explained my terms at the attorney's office. They have not changed. Return the condo to its original state, pay the $150,000 in damages, and make a formal written apology to the extended family. If you meet these 3 conditions, I will consider requesting a lighter sentence. But dropping the charges is impossible. A fraud case involving this amount of money is a felony, not a misdemeanor that I can just drop. The police already have the evidence. They will proceed with the legal process. The most I can do is help mitigate the sentence, not absolve you of the crime. The $150,000 is the price you have to pay for your greed." At the mention of $150,000, Tiffany's crying slowly subsided. Her cunning eyes looked at me calculatingly. A few seconds of silence filled the room before my sister-in-law's true nature was revealed. The pleading had failed. Tiffany knew her crocodile tears couldn't shake my resolve. She wiped her fake tears and slowly stood up. Her pitiful demeanor vanished, replaced by a defiant expression and a challenging stare. "Clara, don't push it. $150,000 is not a small amount of money. Where are we supposed to get it? If you're determined to ruin us, don't expect to have a peaceful life either." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms, watching Tiffany's drastic transformation. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do to me?" Tiffany put her hands on her hips, lifted her chin, and threatened. "Don't forget you're still a part of this family. If you keep forcing my husband to pay and send my mom to jail, I'll spread your story all over social media. I'll hire bots to write that you're a slut, that you had an affair with your own brother-in-law while your husband was away. I'll frame you for cheating. Your mother-in-law found out, and that's why you're taking revenge. To silence them. Social media is powerful these days. People love drama. We'll see if you still have a face to show at work. We'll see if you have any dignity left. Your husband, Ben, will divorce you in a heartbeat. Hearing his wife's threat, Kevin, who was initially shocked, now had a glint of wicked hope in his eyes. His silence was an implicit approval of his wife's dirty plan. They thought that destroying a woman's reputation was the ultimate weapon to force me to back down. They were convinced that a professional with a reputation to protect, like me, would be terrified of being slandered on social media. I stood there silently. I wasn't angry, nor was I panicked. I just felt a deep sadness mixed with an overwhelming disgust for the people my husband was related to. They were not just greedy and foolish, but also utterly despicable. I let out a small laugh. The sound of my laughter in the quiet night startled Tiffany and Kevin. It wasn't a laugh of fear, but of absolute confidence from someone in control. I casually walked to my desk and picked up my phone, which was lying face down. I opened the voice recorder app. An audio file, just saved a few seconds ago, appeared on the screen. I pressed play. Tiffany's shrill, venomous voice filled the small room. Every word was perfectly recorded. From her threat to frame me for an affair to her plan to ruin my reputation and my marriage, everything was captured. Tiffany's face turned white as a sheet. Her legs gave out. She had to grab Kevin's shoulder to keep from falling. Kevin gaped at the phone in my hand as if it were a bomb. They never imagined that I had a habit of recording every important conversation. It was a basic skill taught during my 4 years of law school. Always gather evidence in every situation to protect yourself from devious people. Tiffany, do you think I'm a child you can scare with such dirty tricks? Defamation and slander are serious offenses. Spreading false information to ruin someone's reputation is a crime that carries a prison sentence. Your pregnancy might get you a suspended sentence, but a criminal record will follow you for life. I took a step forward, holding the phone up to their faces. I've already uploaded this recording to the cloud. Go ahead, post your lies on social media. The moment that post appears, this recording will be handed over to the investigators, along with a criminal complaint for extortion and defamation. At that point, it won't just be Kevin and your mom. You'll be joining them in prison. Does your family enjoy having reunions behind bars? Tiffany was terrified. Her teeth chattered. She trembled as she clasped her hands in front of her. Please, Clara. I misspoke. I'm sorry. Don't report me. I'll have Kevin pack up tomorrow. I'll find the money for the damages. I'm begging you. With no pride left, Kevin pulled his wife's arm and backed toward the door. Clara, we're leaving now. We won't dare again. Please, take care. They opened the door and fled. The sound of their hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway before being swallowed by the closing elevator doors. I stood inside my room, locked the door securely, and let out a weary sigh. The psychological battle with these deceitful people had drained me. But I couldn't afford to break. Because tomorrow I would face the greatest test of my life as a wife. Ben's return. Saturday morning, the sky was clear and the air was crisp. As scheduled, Ben's flight from Japan was due to land at JFK at 10 in the morning. Since the whole ordeal with his family, I had made no attempt to contact him. I wanted him to finish his work without distraction. And more importantly, I wanted to see his initial reaction when he received the news from his side of the family. I knew that the moment he turned on his phone, he would be bombarded with dozens of missed calls and tearful pleas for help from Aunt Carol, Uncle Rick, Tiffany, and other relatives. They would surely spin a sob story where Brenda was a kind, innocent mother wronged by her cruel daughter-in-law. They would paint me as a greedy monster with no humanity. At exactly noon, my phone rang. My husband's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, took a deep breath to compose myself, and answered the call. Hello, Ben. Are you back? I started, trying to keep my voice as calm as usual. Clara, where are you? I'm outside your place. Ben's voice was hoarse, filled with exhaustion and anxiety. I was surprised he hadn't gone straight to his mother's house in Queens, but had come to my address instead. Mike, the security guard, must have given him the address when he went there looking for me. I hurried to open the door. Ben stood there. His suit was wrinkled, his face gaunt from the long flight. Seeing that I was okay, he let out a sigh of relief, dropped his suitcase, and immediately pulled me into a tight embrace. Are you all right? I've heard from everyone. Mom was arrested, our condo is a crime scene, you're living in a studio. What in the world happened? He released me from the hug. His eyes, full of sadness and confusion, searched mine. I pulled his suitcase into the room and closed the door. I poured him a glass of warm water, waiting for him to finish it before I spoke. Sit down, Ben. I'm going to show you the whole truth. The truth that hasn't been twisted by your family. I opened a file folder, taking out the evidence one by one and laying it on the table in front of him. The deed in my name. The purchase agreement. The bank statements. Then, I showed him the photo of the fake bill of sale Brenda had created. Finally, I opened my laptop and played the CCTV footage showing his mother and Kevin's family breaking the lock and taking over my condo while I was away. Ben sat as still as a statue. His eyes scanned every document, every forged word, and remained fixed on the laptop screen. When he saw the image of the mother he respected orchestrating the violation of her own son and daughter-in-law's home, his hands, resting on his thighs, clenched into tight fists. The veins on the back of his hands stood out. A testament to the immense anger and disappointment he was trying to contain. I took the proper legal channels. Mom and Kevin took that fake document to a law office to try and sell my home for $4 million. I had to call the police to stop them. Your relatives came to pressure me to take a few $100,000 and stay quiet. Tiffany came here and threatened to slander me, to say I was having an affair with Kevin, so I would drop the charges. I have it all on tape. I recounted everything calmly, without embellishment, without tears. I was waiting for one sentence from him. I was prepared for the worst-case scenario. If he chose to defend his mother, if he blamed me, I would immediately sign the divorce papers I had already prepared in a drawer. Ben closed his eyes and rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture of a man torn between the two most important women in his life. A suffocating silence filled the room, broken only by the whir of the fan. Suddenly, Ben opened his eyes. His gaze was no longer confused, but filled with a resolve I rarely saw in my gentle husband. He reached out and took both of my cold hands in his. Clara, I am so sorry. 1,000 times, I am sorry. I was wrong. I was away for work and left my wife to endure all of this from my own family. He spoke each word clearly. His voice trembled, but his eyes were resolute. My mother was wrong, completely wrong. She and Kevin's family were blinded by greed, trampling on the law and our family bond. You did the right thing, Clara. If you had given in, they would have only gotten worse. Don't worry, I'm your husband. I'm on your side. I'm on the side of what's right. Those who are in the wrong must be held accountable by the law. You're not fighting this alone anymore. I'm here. The tears I had held back for so long suddenly streamed down my face. Not because I was weak, but because I knew I had chosen the right man. Ben's decisiveness in defending his wife had lit a warm fire in my cold heart. I was no longer alone in this fight. The mediation hearing was the next day. His presence would be the final, devastating blow to my husband's family's hopes. Monday morning, the New York sky was bright. I wore an elegant gray business suit, my hair neatly braided, and carried a leather portfolio with all my legal documents as I walked through the gates of the New York County Supreme Court. Today was the mediation hearing before the district attorney's office officially decided whether to proceed with a full investigation and indictment. The law always has a human side, offering a final chance for parties to reconcile and address civil consequences as a consideration for not pursuing criminal charges, especially in cases involving family. However, the final decision rested with me, the victim. Mr. Harrison was by my side, his demeanor calm and professional. The mediation room was spacious and formal, with a large U-shaped wooden table. A court-appointed mediator presided over the session, a clerk beside him preparing the minutes. Across from us, Brenda and Kevin were already seated. They had been brought over from the holding facility by officers. Their appearance was drastically different. The arrogant mother-in-law and the thuggish brother-in-law were gone. Brenda's hair was disheveled, her face sallow and wrinkled. Her thin jacket looked worn. Kevin was lethargic, his eyes sunken, his beard scruffy. He kept rubbing his hands together nervously. In the back row, Tiffany sat with her growing belly, constantly wiping away tears. The mediator tapped his gavel, declaring the session open. He asked the parties to breathe. She launched into her old drama, tears streamed down her face. As soon as the mediator finished, Brenda shot to her feet. She launched into her old drama. Tears streamed down her face, her voice trembling. Your Honor, I've been wronged. I'm an old woman who has sacrificed her whole life for her children and grandchildren. I saw my son and daughter-in-law living in a luxury home while my own daughter had to rent. Out of pity, I took the initiative to sell the condo to my daughter at a low price so they could have a place to live. I had no intention of stealing anyone's property. My daughter-in-law herself agreed to the sale. She signed the paper herself. I even gave her $300,000. But now she's turned on me, conspiring with an outsider to frame me. She wants to send me to jail so she can have all the property for herself. Please, Your Honor, see the injustice I'm suffering as a mother. Brenda cried hysterically, trying to play the part of a simple, innocent woman wronged by her cunning, city-slicker daughter-in-law. Her speech was fluent, proving she had rehearsed this scenario extensively while in custody. Seeing his mother-in-law's performance, Kevin immediately stood up. Your Honor, I am a buyer in good faith. My mother-in-law told me my sister-in-law had agreed to sell the house for $300,000. I trusted my family, so I gathered all my money to give to my mother-in-law. I had no idea the document was fake. I'm a victim here too. I'm a victim of a conflict between a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. I bought that house with my own hard-earned money. Please, let the law protect a little guy like me. Kevin's words made me sick. He was shamelessly throwing his mother-in-law under the bus to evade responsibility. His cowardly and selfish nature was on full display before the law. The mediator frowned, looking at Brenda and Kevin with a sharp gaze. Ma'am, sir, you need to understand. The forensics team has already analyzed the signature and stamp on that bill of sale. The results confirm they do not belong to Mrs. Miller. The building's CCTV also clearly recorded you hiring a locksmith to break into the condo. This physical evidence cannot be refuted by empty words. In this mediation, the court is only considering your cooperative attitude in rectifying the consequences as a factor for the next steps. Brenda was still defiant. Your Honor, I'm his mother. Her property is our family's property. The law must also consider family ties. Who's ever heard of a daughter-in-law suing her mother-in-law over selling a house? She's a shameless, ungrateful child. Just then, the door to the mediation room swung open. The creaking hinge drew everyone's attention. The tense atmosphere briefly subsided. A tall, well-built man in a white shirt walked in with a steady stride. It was Ben, my husband. Ben's appearance was like a splash of cold water in the heated room. Brenda, who had been wailing, fell silent. Her eyes lit up. She quickly reached out to Ben like a drowning person spotting a life raft. Ben, my son, you're back. Save your mother. Look at what your disrespectful wife has done. She's conspiring with an outside lawyer to send me to jail. She's framing me for forging a document. You're her husband, tell her to drop the charges right now. Our family can't accept a venomous woman like her. Throw her out of the house this instant. Tiffany, in the back, chimed in tearfully. Ben, have pity on your mother and our family. Clara has ruined us. She's demanding $150,000 in damages. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? Please, tell her to forgive Mom and Kevin. Both Brenda and Tiffany were convinced that a man like Ben, who had always been compliant and yielded to his mother, would be furious to see his family dragged to court by his wife. They were expecting a scene where Ben would lash out at me, berate me, and force me to apologize. They were using the mother-son and sibling bonds to manipulate him, hoping to turn him into their most powerful weapon against me. I sat silently, looking at Ben with a calm expression. I had told him the whole truth. I had given him a choice. Now was the time for him to show his stance as a man, a husband, between right and wrong, between the law and blind loyalty. Ben didn't look at Brenda, nor did he answer Tiffany. He walked steadily past the table and stopped right beside my chair. He gave a respectful nod to the mediator and the clerk, then turned to face his mother. His face was cold, his eyes red with suppressed anger and profound disappointment. Mom, be quiet. Don't pressure my wife anymore. Ben's voice was clear and firm. Each word landed like a hammer blow in the silent room. Brenda was stunned. Her forced smile vanished. Her hands fell limply to her sides. What do you mean? You're yelling at your mother, the woman who gave birth to you, but you're defending this outsider against your own mother? Ben took a deep breath, his voice growing louder, showing an unshakable resolve. Mom, there's no need for an act in front of the law. I've seen all the evidence. I've seen the video of you bringing a locksmith to break into my wife's home. I've seen that ridiculous bill of sale with the forged signature. That $3 million condo is the fruit of my wife's labor. It's the retirement savings of her grandparents. You and Kevin's family conspired to steal it. Even cursed at her and threw out her belongings. You are a mother, but you have none of a mother's morals. Kevin's face turned pale. He tried to defend himself, but Ben pointed a finger straight at his face and shouted. You be quiet, Kevin. You're a man who does nothing but leech off women. You participated in a crime, and now you're blaming it all on your mother-in-law to save your own skin. You don't deserve to be called a man. Ben turned back to the mediator, his voice calm and firm again. Your Honor, I am Ben Miller, husband of the victim, Clara Miller. I confirm that everything my wife has reported is true. I fully support her decision to pursue legal action. Then, Ben turned to look directly into his mother's eyes, uttering one final sentence that shattered his family's last hope. Mom, listen carefully. If you and Kevin's family do not immediately accept the mediation terms, return the home, and pay the damages to Clara, then I will personally submit additional evidence and testify in court to put you and my brother-in-law in prison. The law does not make exceptions for criminals, even if that criminal is my own mother. The entire room fell silent. Mr. Harrison smiled with satisfaction. The clerk stopped typing, looking up at the brave husband. Tiffany covered her face and sobbed. As for Brenda, she slumped in her chair, defeated. Her eyes were vacant as she stared at the son who had always been so obedient, now single-handedly sealing her fate. She had lost. Utterly defeated by the truth and the power of justice. After Ben's firm declaration, the mediation room fell silent, save for Tiffany's sobs. Brenda sat motionless like a shattered clay statue, all her arrogance gone. Her false arguments about family ties and a mother-in-law's authority had been demolished by her own son. Kevin hung his head, a cold sweat drenching his back. He knew his chances of escaping the law were gone. The mediator cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Mrs. Miller, Mr. Evans, you have heard Mr. Ben Miller's statement clearly. Before the law, objective truth is the only determinant. The act of forging documents to seize another's assets, especially of such a high value, constitutes felony fraud. The penalty for this crime is not light. This is the final mediation before the investigation proceeds. If the victim, Mrs. Miller, agrees to withdraw her complaint after you have fulfilled your obligations, the court will note it, and the case can be closed. This is your only chance. Mr. Harrison produced a printed settlement agreement and presented it to the mediator. Your Honor, our side maintains our 3 demands for restitution. First, return the condominium to its original condition within 3 days. Second, pay $150,000 in damages for emotional distress, repairs, and associated costs. Third, pay all court fees and legal expenses incurred. If the defendants agree to sign and fulfill these obligations, Mrs. Miller will file to withdraw her complaint. The mediator read the draft agreement, then nodded to the clerk to pass it to Brenda and Kevin. Read this carefully. If you agree, sign it. Your decision will determine your future. Brenda stared at the paper before her, her wrinkled hand trembling as she picked it up. $150,000 was not a small sum. She, who had planned to snatch a $3 million asset for $300,000, now had to pay a steep price for her freedom. The cost of greed was indeed high, but she had no other choice. With great difficulty, Brenda took the pen. Her hand shook violently as she signed her name, officially binding herself to the legal settlement. That shaky signature became a mark of atonement for her malicious intent. When it was Kevin's turn, he didn't hesitate for a second. He snatched the pen and signed his name. For him, escaping prison was more important than any pride. The mediator examined the signatures, then nodded, declaring the mediation successful. The defendants were ordered to fulfill the agreement within 3 days. The police department would oversee the transfer of the property. The mediation was concluded. I stood and gathered my files. Ben came to my side, placing a hand on my waist in a firm, protective gesture. Across the room, Brenda stood unsteadily, supported by Tiffany. She looked at me, but there was no more hatred in her eyes, only the vacant stare of a loser who had realized the law was not a game and her daughter-in-law was not a weak woman to be trampled on. We walked out of the courthouse, leaving them to face the consequences of their own greed. Thursday morning, exactly 3 days after the mediation, Ben and I were in the hallway of the 15th floor of my building. With us were 2 professional locksmiths and a uniformed police officer to oversee the execution of the agreement. The hallway was buzzing with whispering neighbors. The apartment door was open. Inside, Kevin and Tiffany were hastily packing their belongings. A far cry from their arrogant demeanor weeks ago, Kevin was now shirtless, sweat pouring down his body as he lifted heavy boxes. Tiffany, in a maternity dress, struggled to carry plastic bags filled with clothes, her head bowed, not daring to look at anyone. The neighbors, who had heard the story from building management, openly cast disdainful looks. I thought some big shot bought that luxury condo. Turns out it was just a thief trying to rip off his own sister-in-law. How embarrassing. The voice of a woman from the unit across the hall was loud and clear, serves them right for faking a document. They got arrested and now have to pay damages. Humiliated for life. Kevin gritted his teeth, but in front of the police and us, he didn't dare retaliate. He swallowed every insult, continuing to haul their things to the elevator. Brenda sat on a plastic chair outside, guarding their possessions. She wore a face mask and a hat, trying to hide her face from onlookers. An overwhelming sense of shame radiated from her every move. When the last box was out, I stepped in front of Brenda. I took a thick black plastic bag from my purse and tossed it at her feet. The sound of a large bundle of cash hitting the floor drew attention. "Mom, take this. This is the $300,000 you transferred to my account to steal this home. I'm returning it to you today, in cash, every single penny. From now on, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. I am officially taking back my rightful property." Brenda shakily hugged the bundle of money to her chest, tears soaking her mask. That money was Kevin and Tiffany's life savings. Now returned in full, but they had to lose $150,000 for damages, on top of a criminal record and lifelong shame. I nodded to the locksmiths. "Please, change all the locks." The sound of a power drill whirred to life, destroying the old lock they had so brazenly installed. The family finally entered the elevator. The doors closed, sealing away the pathetic shadows of greedy people. I turned, lifted my head, and stepped into my own home. My $3 million condo was finally quiet again. The first thing I did was open all the windows, letting fresh air flood the space. I called a professional cleaning service, instructing them to throw out the mattress, the sofa, and anything else Kevin's family had touched. I was willing to spend tens of thousands on new furniture rather than live with the trace of their bad luck in my home. Ben patiently helped me. He didn't complain once, knowing the psychological wounds I had suffered were far more costly than any material possession. By evening, the apartment was clean and fresh. New furniture was in place. A smart lock with facial and fingerprint recognition was installed, providing maximum security. As I was resting, my phone buzzed with a bank notification. My balance had increased by $150,000. The sender was Kevin, with the note payment for damages as per mediation agreement. I smiled. Satisfied. This legal battle had ended in absolute victory. Ben brought me 2 glasses of orange juice. He sat beside me, taking my hand. "It's all over, Clara. I've spoken to all the relatives. They know the full story, and no one blames you. Mom and Kevin's family have moved to a modest house on the outskirts of the city. From now on, we'll live here. You've suffered too much. Let me make it up to you by giving you a peaceful life." I leaned my head on my husband's shoulder, feeling the calming beat of his heart. A woman's greatest happiness is not the amount of money in her bank account, but having a life partner who understands, who can distinguish right from wrong, and who is ready to shield her from life's storms. I opened my social media. It was time to close this case and make it a lesson for anyone who intended to bully others. I uploaded a photo of my condo's deed next to my NYU School of Law diploma. I wrote a short but sharp caption. The law was not created for decoration, but to protect justice. Greed is human nature, but ignorance of the law is what will destroy your life. Never mistake a woman's silence and patience for weakness. It is the time she is using to gather evidence for a fatal counterattack. Thank you to my 4 years at law school for shaping me into a person with a cool head, a steel heart, and a flawless, logical mind. I hit post. Instantly, hundreds of likes and supportive comments from friends and colleagues poured in. I smiled and turned off my phone. Outside, the city was bathed in light. Inside my warm apartment, I sipped my sweet orange juice, breathing in the scent of freedom and justice. The story of the $300,000 fake document was buried forever, replaced by a new, happier, and more peaceful chapter of my life.